Okay, we're now on with the Japan panel, and we're back with Hideki and Marc, who are old veterans in this event. I think this is the third time you guys have been here. It seems to be, you guys seem to be back by popular demand, which is a good thing. We will go straight to first presentation from Marc Einstein. I'll let you introduce yourselves, and then we follow up with Hideki and a bit of a Q&A afterwards. So over to you, Marc.
Actually, we had Hideki speaking first, if that's okay.
Okay, great. Hideki, over to you then.
All right, thank you. This is Hideki, and hello everyone. I'd like to share a couple of the updates since last the event. We got the couple deals actually, and one is completely done. And Marc, could you scroll the pages, please?
Sure.
Yep. So the most recent deal done case study in the Japanese market is like, I'm actually working on the several project at the in parallel, and the current status there is the one complete and ongoing is the two, and a couple several are on the queue as a project because I'm actually running with only few bridging manager now to evaluate CEE tech company is can like a really good fitting into like a Japanese market. So I need to carefully check and moderate really well. So it's actually taking time, but luckily I got a couple of deals, and it started from not huge projects, but the most of the project is like 1.5 months length, like a software developing project mostly, and that's easy to do, easy to start with. And which companies actually working on is especially from Bulgaria. I'm actually working closely with the Accedia now, and also a couple of Ukraine company and Poland and some others. And the clients are basically from software development, tech company, but most end user are actually willing to work with. You guys are like a warehouse, real estate, and security, and some manufacturing companies. So the current clients actually gave us a business is warehouse, real estate, and software development companies, and then they are focusing on like a quick software development now. And I'm actually focusing on, doing a couple of the projects, for 2 months or 3 months and stuff. And for CE companies, I'm somehow trying to really cooperate. So I'm trying to get the deal done really quick, like 1 month or 2 months. So usually like a Japanese company takes like 6 months to 1 year to get that first deal because they are really, really careful about the initiation. So I actually bridging all the businesses from the customer to CEE, the partners, so that the Japanese company actually feel much easy to start with working with all the CE companies. So that's how we were doing. And why CE companies are actually chosen from like Japanese companies are there's a two key part. One, business value, which is the speed of the development. Because a Japanese company, especially like IT tech developing companies are really slow development software development because they are carrying so much quality. But think about the agile or Scrum approach, which is really fast development, is actually bring the customer or management more saving cost in the time, which has much more value to the business opportunity. So those like values is actually expected from management side. And then the other part is the quality of elegant UI and the UX. I'll talk about a little bit about the back context of why they need the quality of this area. Can you slide the pages? So this is really easy to understand. Like Japan have so much history. That many of them, I mean, many of you guys already know like what's katana, like Japanese sword are. So we actually, make those really, really fine, even manually, right? Very beautiful. We're sticking with the history, meaning that we take time to make the quality much, much better and much finer. And we have a sense, we have, blood to do so, whether we think or feel or not. So we don't have other way to do that. So we need some others' help, right? And also like, our business, think about the economy, like 1980s, 1990s, Japanese economy is really, really good, really, really grow up. And we had a huge success, experience, which we can't get out. So from like a quality experience and all the, successive experience, making us to actually make us really difficult to do digital transformation. Can you, Marc? So we know like CEE companies have better quality development and they have a speed of the development. Also, like you can bring a better, designs. However, most of the companies does not have a capability to easy to use CE companies, meaning that we don't have a better protocol, how to engage with the CE's, solution providers. So I'm actually helping, in between. And then what actually customer actually need is to learn how to engage with CEE, of course, like service provider. Number two is, they need to, evaluate all the quality, the pricing and stuff. But, as I mentioned, they need a trust in terms of, believing what CEE, service provider can do, and they can provide a better quality for them. Otherwise, they can't jump in to the new area. So now, me, myself, and my partner actually supporting, the trying to fit the gap. So I'm of course, trying to, bring some idea how CE company can, engage with the Japanese. So I usually do like bridging the support first, but I'm not trying to do the business. I'm just trying to teach how to ease, CE service provider can engage with, Japanese client directly. So that's something, you guys need to learn. So in the end, can you scroll the pages, please? So here's a really, really interesting area. I would say like emerging area in the Japanese market nowadays. I'm closely working with entertainment and the gaming company now. So this is one of the examples. There's my avatar, which is in like a 3D, how do you say, like there's so much camera, on the boxes, and we capture the people and make the avatar. Then we can bring the avatar into games. And that's really, really huge, and people are fascinated to do that. And one of the companies, Square Enix, you might heard, which is, actually the Final Fantasies are, really, really famous across the globe, though. So they are actually partnering with such, like avatar type of the solutions. And what they're trying to do is to, engage with like Sansar, or like a metaverse, to gain more, like a business market opportunity, like medical, PR, games, or like amusement or music events, such. And now, like a mega entertainment company and a tech company are, involved with a really, really huge amount of money. So on this area, we actually need so much help from the, like CE service provider. If people are interested in some, game and entertainment this area, please, contact me so that you can probably talk with them to figure out what they can do. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm going to do my presentation now, but I guess good morning for most of you if you're in Europe. And my name is Marc Einstein, and I'm the Chief Analyst for Telecom and Digital Services at ITR. And I think as Tom mentioned, this is my third time doing this, and so it's really great to be back. And today I was actually asked to give a little bit of a perspective on AI, as obviously that is a huge topic in Japan, and also a very emerging area in your part of the world and everywhere else, frankly. But in case you haven't been at one of these events before, I'll just very quickly introduce my company and myself. So basically, ITR Corporation, which is my company, is the largest Japan-based independent ICT research and consulting firm. And so basically what my company does is we provide independent advice to large Japanese companies. And so I work with, everything from the banks, the railroads, the automotive guys, the manufacturers, the big tech vendors here. And, they come to us to get advice on which vendors they should use. Sometimes we do startup scouting. We do contract management. We help with business planning, all sorts of these things. And so from time to time, I do get inquiries from my customers about CEE, as I think Hideki has just shown, that your part of the world is of increasing interest to our part of the world. And so, I think that's why events like this are so interesting. And so that's just a little bit about who I am if you haven't seen one of my speeches before. But today I'm just going to talk for only about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll go into Q&A. But one of the things I wanted to just start out with was in the last event that Hideki and I attended, which I think was in September. Of course, we were talking a lot about COVID-19 and how this has really very, very quickly changed the IT landscape. I would argue more so in Japan than elsewhere. And I think, last time we were saying, one of the questions was, what's going to happen to the IT market in Japan, given COVID-19. And so my company has been actually tracking the average growth of IT spending in Japan since way back in 2001. And you can see that, we've been tracking, a market that was growing. And then in 2009, with the Lehman shock, the market crashed. And it's, continuously been recovering up until 2020. We didn't know what was going to happen. And I actually said back then, we thought that the market was still going to grow. And it was going to grow by about 2%. And we just came out with some new data, so I wanted to share that with you. And the market did, in fact, almost grow by exactly 2%. So, Japan has seen a massive transition to working remotely, which was a very taboo concept prior to the pandemic. And so that's brought about new needs for security, and remote file sharing and e-signatures and all sorts of things. So we do think that the market grew in 2020, and we actually do think it's going to grow in 2021, maybe at a little bit less rate, as some companies are still very jittery in terms of what's going to happen. If you watch the news, you'll know that Japan is about to enter the second lockdown phase, not only in Tokyo but also in Osaka and Kyoto and maybe Nagoya. So, but overall, this is a very, very strong message, and I think this leads us into talking about AI in Japan, because I think what we've already seen is that we've seen a massive transition to remote work, security, file sharing, e-signatures, as kind of phase one in this COVID-led digital transformation. but I think we're now going into phase two. And I think that this phase two is going to, increasingly involve AI. AI, as you probably know, has always been a buzzword in Japan because of, the automotive industry here, self-driving cars. Japan has always been on the forefront of robotic technology, but this is only getting stronger due to COVID. And so I am very upbeat, not only about the prospects for AI in general, but also in the prospects of, more collaboration between Japan and the Central and Eastern European region. And so I think, again, if you've seen me speak, you may have seen me talk about this before, but when we talk about AI and IoT, I think Japan is a little bit unique in that AI kind of holds a special place in the Japanese IT psyche, because AI is not only seen as something that improves efficiency and safety, like it might be in the United States or Europe. But I think AI is really seen as a way that can fix a lot of Japan's social problems. And so, for anyone that is somewhat familiar with Japan, you would know that we have a very fast aging population. Labor shortages here are at emergency levels in many industries. COVID-19 has made this worse because many foreigners have left. Many more foreigners are currently not able to come back to Japan. So some industries like retail and manufacturing have just been hammered by this. But, even things that are less well known. So, Japan is very dependent on imports of food from overseas. And so making the agriculture and aquaculture industries more efficient by AI is a huge push. Clean energy. Japan, ever since the 2011 disaster, has shut off many of its nuclear reactors and has very quickly gone to solar and wind. We've liberalized the energy sector in the last few years, really making the new energy sector in Japan more efficient is a major impetus that the government currently has. And even things like natural disasters, being able to monitor earthquakes and volcanoes and typhoons and floods. Japan is a very natural disaster prone country. And so I guess my message to you is that, if you are able to incorporate this into your marketing, then I think this is a very strong selling proposition in Japan, and I would say especially strong in Japan. And so I want to give you some examples. And so basically, what we're seeing now is that, Japanese companies are planning to use AI for a variety of things. And it looks like the auto translate didn't work on this, but, basically there is a very big push to improve product quality, to reduce the need for human labor, to reduce, certain functions within the organization, such as quality assurance and human resources and things like that. Things like RPA and machine learning have, already been some of the most popular topics that my company has been working with for several years. I expect that to continue, and I expect AI to be an increasingly in demand service in Japan. And so I want to show you a few examples of, some of the most recent examples of how AI is being used in Japan. And so if anyone, in the audience has ever been to Japan, you might know that there are vending machines absolutely everywhere. We have more vending machines per capita in Japan than any country in the world. And so JR East, which is, one of the two big railroads in Japan, covering Tokyo and the eastern half of the country, recently made a deal with a company called Hivory, to basically manage all of their vending machines. And so basically, things like determining what the products, should be in which vending machine, what the product mix should be, when we should be restocking, how to optimize, where they're located is now completely done with artificial intelligence. Previously, it was done on paper and on Excel spreadsheets. And, this is a big trend. And so we're seeing this in convenience stores. We're seeing it, all across Japan. But what's interesting about this particular deal is JR East is a very big company and a very conservative government-run company. Hivory is actually an Australian company. So, the days of all this business only going to Sony or Hitachi or Panasonic or Fujitsu are over. And, there is an increasing, open door for foreign companies in Japan. This is something I've been saying for quite a while, but we're keep seeing more and more deals. And so I think this is something to be very excited about. Agriculture, I talked about the labor shortage. Japan has a massive labor shortage. Agriculture is one of the most affected industries. I think the average age of a farmer in Japan is getting close to 70. These people are retiring, and these jobs are not being replaced. And so this is a very high concern because of the government. And again, if you've ever been to Japan, Japan is probably the only country in the world where you could spend 50 euros on an apple, on one apple if you want. If you want to buy a 300-euro watermelon, you're welcome to come here and try one. But this also means that, robotics that are driven by AI are being introduced in the agriculture sector. So Denso, which is a very, very big automotive parts manufacturer in Japan, has actually teamed up with the government to create robots which are able to use AI and are able to autonomously drive around the fields and scan, pick, and package these very, very expensive apples by themselves. These kinds of technologies are very, very much in demand with AI, especially when it comes to imaging for use in industries like aquaculture. I've seen AI being used to determine the color of tuna, the color of salmon, and then determine the price, being used with these expensive fruits. Being used in manufacturing for quality assurance and all sorts of things. So if you have this kind of technology, which solves a big social problem in Japan, it's very much in high demand. And then the other one, and I just picked 3 examples just out of time constraints, but there are literally dozens that we could talk about, is human resources. So HR tech is a super hot issue in Japan. Partially due to the labor shortage. But something you might not know about Japan is Japan has a massively huge recruitment industry. When you place a high-level executive at a Japanese company, I think the average amount that the recruiter gets is 3 months of salary. And so I've known recruiters who, in a good year, completely became very, very rich people. And so because of the labor shortage and because of the huge cost, using AI in human resources has become a huge issue. HR tech overall is one of the biggest areas where my company has been working. So I think SoftBank Corp is a company that is famous because of its very aggressive investments by the founder, Masayoshi Son. They are now using AI screening for all of their applicants. So if you want to work at SoftBank, your first interview is going to be with AI. And, they say that this has cut the total labor time they need by 70%. And I would imagine it's also cut the recruitment costs they've been paying by millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So, these were just 3 areas where I see a lot of movement recently. There are others. But again, just because of time, and I certainly want to leave enough time for Q&A, that was just a really quick run through of, where AI is. And, thank you very much for listening.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Really interesting, incredible. In fact, I remember working in Japan long time ago for Coca-Cola, and at the time they were making their summertime bonuses for the sales guys based on the temperature outside and the humidity level, so that they wouldn't get a free pass just because it's a hot day. So
Right.
that was my first introduction to the sophistication in the Japanese market. Tell us a bit about century bean companies that actually are based in Japan. There've been some big successes, not many, but there have been some quite big successes. Marc is there, and a few other guys are there. The Asset has done very well in the Japanese market. We had a Polish company presenting, I think, in the June edition. Do you see that need? We had the Australia guys and US in the afternoon, are focusing on the need to have a physical presence in the market. Hideki, how much of that, how important is that, especially given the way the world is now post-COVID? We're not post-COVID yet, are we? But we are in the middle of COVID, where the physical necessity is reduced. Do you think that's still important? Not so important? Give us some comments about that.
Great question. I mean, so since the COVID, we originally had we need physical people actually working for us, right? But it's been a year, so people need to change their mindset. Otherwise, they cannot deal with anything. So now situation have been changed, like Mark mentioned. People are start getting ready for the new environment. So I think most of the Japanese companies are capable and not capable enough, but they are open for non-physical like an office or management actually supports directly for them. We can do online, but the issue is still language barrier. So and the communication protocol or collaboration protocol. So somebody needs to manage that. And once they feel or they get used to with it, it's not going to be any problem. You see, you can do like boom, quick business. That's actually I see, and that's how it works now. So in other words, like mega companies have some IT personnel that who can speak English. So, but it's really rare to find. So if you think of the opportunity, numbers of opportunity or the market, you might need to find someone actually can bridge. I can of course help, but like a CE company might have an opportunity to hire someone like that, so that they can probably deal with the Japanese companies. Thank you,
Marc.
Yeah, I would actually mention Avast. I saw them in Prague in very early this year before the situation got bad. They've set up shop here and done fairly well. And as you mentioned, ESET is kind of the gold standard, and Marc, of course, has a decent presence here as well. So, but again, 10 years ago, it would have been zero. So it is creeping up. It's still very small. But to answer your question, I mean, I do think that trying to contact Japanese companies yourself is going to have a very low hit rate. And for phase 0 or phase 1, having a partner in Japan is probably the first step. And if you're able to make it work and make a business case, once all this pandemic stuff is over, I mean, having some presence here, having a website with Japanese will go over very well. It is still important. It is arguably less important than it was, but it is important. And I would point out that there are organizations that are set up to facilitate this, like Retro, that can give free office space for a period of time and things like that. And I would encourage people that are thinking about it after the pandemic to look into some of those organizations, because they're free, and their mission is to help companies like probably the people in the audience.
And Jetro has some of these workshops occasionally as well.
Yes.
Yeah, encouraging foreign investment. Right. Okay. Jumping outside of that subject a little bit, it's talked about the gaming business. Huge business, bigger than many of the media businesses in general. Gaming is, of course, unusual, let's say unique. The qualities in Japan are unique to Japan, but there may still be some opportunity there for Central European companies. The gaming companies here, I mean, the Shangri-La, they want to develop their own businesses, right? They want to have their big home run games themselves. That's how they really make money. They don't really want to be a service provider necessarily, but some might do that as a sort of a process and to get themselves pulled up the food chain, so to speak. Do you see any scope for that, Hideki or Mark, in terms of Japanese companies needing help on the gaming side, massive business globally?
Yes, yes. Because I'm just asked, from the entertainment company, to do like a business, development and a coordination to especially CE regions, because like Tom previously mentioned that there's so much great gaming company over there which actually makes game program or like merchandise items, right? And I mean, like a Japanese company need that. So Japanese company are trying to make a platform, and they want something, they want to put it on the platform. So there's a huge potential for like CE companies.
Mark,
Yeah, and I would qualify that a little bit. I agree that it's a massive opportunity. I would also say, because I worked in the gaming industry in Japan for a while, and what I would say is that, you really need to segment the gaming industry a little bit, because there are the massive players like Nintendo and Sony, and they're very conservative, and they're going to do what they want to do. But I would say that some of the medium-sized companies might be more interesting and more flexible. I would also say, and Hideki alluded to this, is that VR for gaming, but also beyond gaming, is also very interesting. There are not a lot of VR developers in Japan, and VR is increasingly being used not only for gaming, but for social networking and for enterprise training and all these kinds of things. And so I would actually also consider that in the greater opportunity when we talk about digital entertainment.
And one more thing. So in the gaming industry, people trying to hire people who can actually write, program, and draw items, designers. So that's the actual situation of the market.
And the graphic design, I mean, the graphic design in Japan is extraordinarily high quality and unique to that market. Do you think there's the skill set in Central Europe occasionally that might fulfill some of that?
Okay. Yes, for like a VR or virtual world type of gaming. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's eligible.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I think you need to segment, like the really Japan anime focused art. I like the company I worked for tried to do it in Vietnam. It didn't work because it wasn't quite the same style that we have here. But for other things, avatars and VR realistic world programs, I don't see why that couldn't be done. And the last time I was in the region, I saw some very impressive demos by some of the companies there. I do believe that they're quite capable.
Okay. Jumping away to a different subject entirely, Olympics and World Expos. I mean, you've got the Olympics coming up theoretically this summer. Just give us some comments about that. Just curious your opinions. But also, then you have the Osaka World Expo coming up soon. And as I bring up Osaka, I will also ask you an open question, both of you. Are there other pockets of people we should be talking to here to bring into this event next time that are, I don't know, IT associations in Osaka or in wherever it might be? But that's an open question. But let's talk about Olympics, fun stuff, and interesting things first.
Mark, what do you think? It's kind of pretty. I don't know, because I have no idea what the government will say about that people can just go and actually physically see like a game and stuff. We just might need to stick with the TV. So I have no idea.
I have 28 tickets. I'm not sure what I'm going to end up, but which is another topic. But My opinion, which is just a layman's opinion, but the government has spent $60 billion, and this is very much Abe's legacy. And I think that even if it's just Japan, then and no fans, I think they're going to do it in some way, shape, or form. But at the same time, they're really dragging their feet on vaccines and things like that. So I think a lot of people here in Japan don't really know what's going to happen.
Okay. And Osaka World Expo. Last time I was in Japan, I went to Osaka and met with the city there, and they are planning to kind of their Osaka Expo. I think it's 2025.
25, yeah.
What do you hear about the likelihood of that happening, or are they getting nervous, still excited? What do you hear about that, if anything?
Actually, my close friend actually working for that kind of the event in Osaka Prefecture. They are really fascinated, and the people actually involved is a younger age, meaning that they are trying to do like a new stuff. So it's gonna be so much different from the like a traditional Japanese event. So I'm hoping to see some of the like next generations like technologies or ideas around like event like promotions or like all the visual stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it all.
Yeah, and I would say, just more generally speaking, that the Osaka, Kobe, Kyoto corridor, which is a region of Japan known as Kansai, their economy alone is bigger than most countries in the world. And they're certainly overshadowed by Tokyo, but there are certainly a lot of companies. And if you extend that out to Nagoya, it's even bigger, because then you include all the automotive guys. So I think that region is overlooked. And, there are a lot of big companies like Panasonic and Nintendo, that are out here. And so it should also be probably an increasing area of focus.
Okay. I also wanted to, I was going to announce this at the very end of the day, but I'll say it now because of the Japan panel. The next edition of this particular event will be a particular focus, deeper focus on Japan. So we're going to go deeper. So I'm going to get you guys much more involved, and I will also pick your brains in how we can dig deeper into Japan, because we want to keep every edition of this, keep it fresh, going deeper or thematically or geographically. So we're going to do Japan deeper. It's going to be on May 21st, and then we'll do again, June will be for the US market. So we're going to do Japan and then shift to the US market there as well. So I will be asking you guys for other suggestions of who else we should bring into that AI. I mean, associations. Is there an AI association? Is there a VR association? There probably are those kind of things at some point. We've got just a few minutes left. I'll see if there are any questions to you guys from our side, but also I know that a few people have asked you all for individual meetings, so make sure that you either jump into that private meeting room with them, or the networking space on the bottom left of the hop-in screen, or the top right if you've got a particularly individual request for a meeting. So it's easy to not see that, overlook that, but make sure you take a look at the top right screen, your profile. There might be a red button requesting a meeting there. Any closing comments, Hideki, and then Marc? Any closing comments or thoughts as we wrap up here the next 2 minutes?
Yeah, in a simple way, from my end. So Japanese, market start making changes, since COVID, last 1 year, had lots of changes. We are now open the market. Still don't know how to engage, but something that you can learn about it, then you guys will find opportunity to get into. Especially I'm working on the gaming market now, and also like web applications. So if somebody interested in getting into that, I can probably hit you some of the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Great, Marc.
Yeah, and I would just say that I've been in Japan. This is my 10th year in Japan, and when I moved here, CEE and Japan was zero. Literally zero. And even 5 years ago, it was almost zero. And it's still arguably almost zero, but it's a lot bigger than it was. And, I'm seeing more and more interest. And, unfortunately, COVID has, put a lot of things on hold, which will eventually come back. But I do think that Japan is increasingly open for business with the region.
Well, I think one of the interesting data points I saw last year was that ESET has revenues from Japan of 85 million euros just from the Japanese market. So if that ought to be some reason to get interested in the Japanese market, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Massive.
Guys, again, we won't see you anytime soon. But thank you once again, as usual. The Japan panels, they are popular. People listen to them. They give us very good feedback, and it's because of you guys. I appreciate it, and appreciate you both keeping it fresh each time. We'll get feedback and suggestions as we have it from our audience as well. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. We are off, and in fact, we are now going to transition into the next presentation, which is AI Clearing, a company out of Czech Republic. But I will say goodbye to and thanks to you guys in the Japan panel, and thanks once again, and hopefully see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.